I remember the day Sarah came home from the grocery store with nothing, not a single bag in her hands. It wasn't unusual for her to forget something or misplace the list. She had this habit of getting lost in her head, often distracted by who knows what. But today felt different. A strange unease had settled in my stomach, a feeling I couldn't shake off. We'd been married for 6 years, and while our relationship had its ups and downs, I always believed we were solid. Sarah was beautiful, smart, and had a certain charm that drew people to her. But as the years went by, I started to notice changes. Little things at first: she was more irritable, her laugh seemed a bit forced, and she often came home late from work. When I asked her about it, she'd look at me with those big, doe-like eyes and say things like, "Oh, I lost track of time," or "Work has just been crazy lately." I wanted to believe her, I really did, but in the back of my mind, doubts began to simmer. That day she came home empty-handed. I was sitting on the couch watching TV, my mind distracted by work. When I saw her walk through the door, something felt off. The way she avoided my gaze felt like a cue that something was amiss. "Did you forget the list?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "No," she snapped back, her voice sharp. "I just ran into some old friends at the store and lost track of time. I figured I could grab what we need tomorrow." There was an edge to her tone that made my heart sink, but I brushed it off. Maybe it was just stress. We had a busy week. But that feeling wouldn't leave me alone. It hovered over me like a storm cloud. I spent the next few days watching her closely. She was distant, texting more than usual, and I began to notice the way she smiled when her phone chimed. It was a smile I hadn't seen directed at me in a while. It was like watching a movie I didn't want to be a part of, yet I couldn't look away. The tipping point came a week later when I made a last-minute decision to surprise her at work with lunch. I had this image in my head of her surprised face and how it would lighten up her day. But when I arrived, the surprise was on me. I spotted Sarah in the parking lot, her back to me, talking animatedly. I was just about to call out to her when I saw him, a tall guy with messy hair and a confident smile. They were laughing, the kind of laughter that felt intimate. My breath hitched in my throat as I watched them, my heart racing. I stood there frozen, a mixture of anger and disbelief swirling inside me. It was like the world had shifted beneath my feet. I wanted to confront her right there, but a part of me needed to know more. So I waited, hidden behind a car. I watched her lean in closer to him, her hand brushing against his arm, and that's when it hit me. The truth slammed into me like a freight train. She was cheating on me. The drive home was a blur. I felt like I was floating outside my own body, everything around me distorted. I tried to convince myself I was wrong, that maybe it was just a friend or a coworker, but deep down I knew what I had seen. The laughter, the closeness, it was all too familiar. It was everything we had lost over the years. When Sarah got home that evening, I could barely look at her, my heart pounding in my chest. I needed to confront her, to hear her deny it. I needed to see her squirm in a web of her own lies. But I didn't want to show her how much she had hurt me just yet. I wanted to play it cool. So I asked her casually, "How was your day?" She looked up, surprise flickering across her face. "It was fine, just the usual, you know how it is." I could see the deception in her eyes. There was no fine in her voice. I could tell she was lying. It felt like I was standing at the edge of a cliff, staring down into the unknown. By that point, I had made up my mind to execute my plan. I wanted her to feel the weight of her betrayal, the sting of her deceit. As I prepared to confront her, a dark resolve settled in my heart. It was time for revenge. I spent the next few days devising my plan, letting the anger and betrayal simmer within me. Each time Sarah walked through the door, I practiced my poker face, hiding the turmoil beneath the surface. I wanted to make sure I had everything lined up perfectly for our confrontation. I needed her to feel the weight of her actions, to understand how deeply she had hurt me. The first step was gathering evidence. I started paying closer attention to her phone. I knew it was a violation of trust, but I felt justified in my actions. I needed to know the truth. I waited for moments when she would leave it unattended or take a shower. Secure in her belief that I was oblivious, she never suspected that I was now a silent observer in her life. One evening, as she was in the shower, I seized the opportunity. I grabbed her phone from the kitchen counter and found it unlocked. A mix of dread and anticipation churned in my stomach as I scrolled through her messages. My heart sank further the more I read. There were flirty texts with that same tall guy I had seen. Her with messages that dripped with intimacy. It was like a punch to the gut, the kind of pain that leaves you gasping for air. The texts revealed a pattern, late-night conversations, jokes that only made sense to them, and even plans to meet up. The final straw came when I stumbled across a photo of them together. They looked so happy, arms draped around each other in a way that made my skin crawl. I felt sick. She thought she could hide this from me, that I wouldn't notice the little changes, the way she brushed off my concerns. But I had seen it, and there was no denying it now. When Sarah emerged from the shower, I acted as if nothing had changed. "What's for dinner?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light, feeling like a complete actor in my own tragic play. She didn't seem to notice. She was too busy scrolling through her phone, her face alight with whatever she was looking at, probably more messages with him. The next few days passed in a blur. I collected more evidence, piecing together the timeline of her betrayal. I documented everything, from the messages to the times she had been out late, the excuses she made. Each new revelation fueled the fire within me. I felt like a detective unraveling a case, and I was determined to confront her when I had all the facts laid out. Finally, I decided I couldn't wait any longer. I wanted to catch her off guard, to confront her when she least expected it. I spent hours rehearsing what I would say, envisioning her reaction. I wanted to see the shock on her face when I laid it all out for her. It was time to break the silence. That evening I set the stage. I made dinner something special, her favorite. I poured us both a glass of wine, the kind that usually sparked intimate conversations. Sarah looked surprised when she walked into the dining room, a soft smile spreading across her face. "Wow, fancy," she said, taking a seat. I took a deep breath, my heart racing. "I wanted to have a talk," I said, trying to sound calm, but I could hear the tremor in my voice. Her smile faded slightly. "About what?" "About us," I replied, locking eyes with her. I could see a flicker of apprehension cross her features. It felt good to take control for once, to steer this ship where I wanted it to go. "I've noticed some changes," I said slowly, choosing my words carefully. "You've been distant, and I can't help but feel like there's something you're not telling me." She started to fidget in her seat, and I could see the wheels turning in her head as she tried to come up with an excuse. "I've just been busy with work, you know how it is," she began, but I cut her off. "No, it's more than that. I know about the messages, Sarah. I saw the photos. I know you're cheating on me." The silence that followed was deafening. Her expression shifted from surprise to indignation, and I could see the anger bubbling beneath the surface. "What are you talking about?" she spat, her voice rising. "You don't know what you're saying." "Oh, I know exactly what I'm saying," I replied, my voice steady. "I have the proof. You can't deny it anymore. It's not what you think," she yelled, her eyes wide with anger. "You're being paranoid. I can't believe you would invade my privacy like this." "So you're just going to lie?" I challenged, letting the hurt seep into my voice. "After everything, after all those late nights and excuses, you think I wouldn't notice?" "I was just trying to keep things together," she shot back, her voice trembling. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under. This isn't about you." My heart shattered as I listened to her excuses. It was like she was trying to twist everything around, turning my pain into something I was at fault for. I felt the anger rise up in me, but I took a breath. I had to remain calm. I wanted her to feel what she had done to me. "I deserve better than this, Sarah," I said softly, my voice breaking. "You've betrayed me in the worst way possible." There was a flicker of remorse on her face, but it quickly turned to anger again. "You don't get to act like the victim here. You've been distant too," she shot back. The confrontation spiraled into a heated argument, both of us raising our voices, throwing accusations back and forth. I felt the walls closing in around me as I grappled with the reality of the situation. This wasn't just a fight. It was a reckoning, a moment where everything we built together was laid bare. When the dust finally settled, we were both left panting, staring at each other across the table. I felt the weight of betrayal hanging heavy in the air, a darkness that threatened to consume us both. In that moment, I realized this was just the beginning of a long, painful journey ahead, one that would test the very foundation of our marriage. The days following our confrontation felt like a surreal nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I had expected anger and outrage from Sarah, but the aftermath left a different kind of emptiness in its wake. As we navigated our new reality, silence replaced our once lively banter. The air in the house was thick with tension, each of us carrying the weight of unspoken words. I tried to maintain some semblance of normalcy, going to work and keeping busy, but the memories of that night haunted me. I replayed the confrontation in my mind, her words echoing like a haunting refrain. "You've been distant too." It felt like a slap in the face. She had taken no responsibility, deflected every accusation, and twisted our shared history into a weapon against me. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing myself in this turmoil. Sarah spent most of her days locked in our bedroom, her phone glued to her hand, and when she was around, she acted like a ghost, drifting through the house silently. I was left with an overwhelming sense of betrayal that seemed to seep into every corner of my life. It was suffocating. One evening, I returned home from work early, hoping to surprise her and maybe break the cycle of silence. I stepped into the house, the familiar scent of lavender from her candles filling the air. It felt almost normal until I heard her muffled voice coming from the bedroom. Curiosity got the better of me, and I approached the door, pausing to listen. "Yeah, I know. I'm trying to figure things out." "No, he doesn't suspect anything," she said, her tone conspiratorial, as if she were sharing secrets rather than the depths of our marital strife. My heart dropped into my stomach. I felt sick, the blood rushing to my head. It was a betrayal layered upon a betrayal. She was still in contact with him, and I had thought she would at least cut ties after the confrontation. I took a step back, my mind racing with anger and confusion. I had expected her to be remorseful, to want to salvage what was left of our marriage, but it seemed she had no intention of doing so. The thoughts of revenge I had entertained in my mind were replaced by a sense of urgency. I needed to act before she slipped further away. Over the next few days, I began to formulate a more elaborate plan. If she wanted to continue this charade, I would make it clear that I wasn't going to play the fool any longer. I decided that I needed proof of her deceit, concrete evidence that would expose her for the liar she was, something I could confront her with that would leave no room for excuses. I reached out to a friend from college, Mark, who had connections in tech and could help me. I explained my situation, omitting the details about the affair to keep it simple, and asked if he could help me track her phone and messages without her knowing. Mark was more than willing to help, and within no time, he set me up with an application that would allow me to monitor her texts and activities. I felt a rush of power, a sense of control that I hadn't felt in weeks. Once the app was installed, I could access her messages at any time. I felt sick at the thought of prying into her private life, but I justified it to myself. She had crossed the line first. I needed to know the extent of her betrayal, and this was the only way to expose her. What I discovered over the next few days was more devastating than I could have imagined. Sarah and the other guy, Jake, had been planning a weekend getaway together, just the two of them. They exchanged details about where they would stay and even joked about how they could sneak away without arousing my suspicions. I felt my heart thudding painfully against my chest, a mix of rage and heartbreak bubbling to the surface. The woman I thought I knew was slipping away, replaced by a person who could so easily betray the trust we had built over years. I kept this information to myself for a few days, waiting for the right moment to confront her again. The more I discovered, the more I felt like I was preparing for a battle. I wanted to catch her off guard, to dismantle her carefully constructed facade in one fell swoop. The day before their planned getaway, I decided it was finally time to confront her again. I didn't want to wait any longer. I wanted to see the shock on her face when I laid everything out for her, and I wanted her to understand that I wasn't going to be a passive participant in this mess she had created. That evening, I walked into the living room where she was scrolling through her phone, her usual distraction. I took a deep breath, my heart pounding in my chest. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady. She looked up, her expression shifting from surprise to annoyance. "What now?" she snapped. "I know about your plans with Jake," I said, watching as her face went pale. "I know you're planning to leave this weekend." "What are you talking about?" she said, her voice rising defensively. "You're being ridiculous." "No, I'm not," I shot back, feeling a surge of adrenaline. "You think I do know? I've seen the messages, Sarah. I know everything." Her eyes widened in disbelief, and for a moment I thought I saw a flicker of fear. "You have no right to invade my privacy," she shouted, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her. "Privacy?" I asked incredulously. "You've crossed every boundary imaginable. You don't get to play the victim here." There was a moment of silence that hung heavy between us, both of us searching for the right words in a storm of emotions. "You don't understand what I'm going through," she finally said, her voice softer but laced with anger. "You've been so distant and neglectful. I needed someone." "Someone? So you thought cheating was the answer?" I felt the anger boiling inside me. "You could have talked to me. We could have worked on things." "It's too late for that," she cried, tears welling up in her eyes. "You were so wrapped up in your own world you didn't even notice me." I struggled to find my voice, the anger consuming me as I processed her words. She was still trying to twist the narrative, making it seem like I was to blame. "You don't get to justify your actions by blaming me. You made a choice and you need to own up to it." Her face twisted into a mask of defiance. "I won't apologize for finding happiness," she shouted, her voice breaking. "Maybe you should have paid more attention to me." The confrontation escalated, both of us raising our voices, words flying across the room like daggers. Each accusation felt like a blow, and I could feel the rift between us widening. I wanted to scream, to let her know how deeply her betrayal cut, but it felt like fighting against an unmovable force. Eventually, the argument fizzled out, leaving us both panting, the weight of our words hanging in the air. I realized in that moment that I couldn't keep fighting against someone who wasn't willing to see the damage they had caused. I had a decision to make, and as the reality of my situation settled in, I knew I had to reclaim my power. It was time to decide how I would move forward, whether it meant confronting her again or finding a way to begin rebuilding my life without her. The days following our explosive confrontation were a blur of emotions. I felt like I was in a tug-of-war between anger and heartbreak, the constant push and pull leaving me exhausted. Sarah had retreated further into herself, and the house felt more like a prison than a home. The silence between us was deafening, filled with unspoken accusations and lingering resentment. I could hardly concentrate on work as thoughts of our heated arguments replayed in my mind. The pain of her betrayal gnawed at me relentlessly. I had always believed that communication was key in a relationship, yet here we were, two people who had shared so much, now reduced to bitter accusations and hollow silence. It was painful to realize that our love had eroded, leaving behind a shell of what once was. That weekend, when Sarah was supposed to be away with Jake, I decided to take a different approach. I wasn't going to sit around, waiting for her to make choices that would further devastate our marriage. No, it was time for action. I needed to regain control of my life, to stop being a passive observer in this twisted drama. I spent the day cleaning the house, trying to clear my mind. I organized our shared spaces, looking for remnants of our happier times, photos, mementos, and little tokens of our love that had once made me smile. I came across our wedding album buried in a box in the attic. As I flipped through the pages, my heart ached at the sight of our smiles, at the promises we made to each other. Those moments felt so distant now, as if they belonged to someone else entirely. I decided to reach out to a few close friends, people I hadn't seen in a while. It felt good to reconnect with old friends, to share laughter and light-hearted banter, if only for a few hours. They were shocked to hear what had happened, and while their sympathy was comforting, it also made me realize how much I had isolated myself from the people who cared about me. They reminded me that I wasn't alone, that friends could offer support even if my marriage was crumbling. As the sun began to set, I returned home, the evening air thick with uncertainty. I opened the door, and the house felt strangely quiet. I glanced around, half expecting her to be there, but she was. The emptiness settled in my chest, a stark reminder of the gulf that now lay between us. I felt a mix of relief and dread, knowing I had the weekend to myself. It was time to reflect on what I wanted out of this situation and whether I could salvage what remained of our marriage. Just as I was about to settle down with a book, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Mark, the friend who had helped me monitor Sarah's phone. "Hey, I've got something important for you. Can we meet?" Curiosity piqued, I agreed to meet him at a coffee shop nearby. As I drove over, my heart raced. I wondered what he had discovered. Was it more evidence against her? Did he find something that would change everything? When I arrived, I found Mark already sitting at a table, a serious look on his face. "Thanks for coming," he said as I sat down, his voice lowered. "I've got some information about Sarah." I leaned in, my heart pounding. "What did you find?" "I was able to pull some data from her phone," he began, pulling out his laptop. "It seems that she's been much more involved with Jake than you think. I found records of several calls and messages that go back for months. This isn't just a fling, it's a full-blown affair." My stomach twisted at the revelation. I had suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed was like being hit with a freight train. "What else?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Here," he said, turning the laptop around to show me the screen. A timeline displayed a multitude of messages accompanied by timestamps. It was clear they had been planning their affair for a long time, talking about meeting places, jokes about sneaking around, even discussions about how they could keep their activities under wraps. Anger surged through me, hot and raw. "She's been lying to me this whole time," I said through gritted teeth. "I thought I was doing everything right, trying to understand her. And she was just playing me for a fool." "Listen, you deserve to know the truth," Mark said gently, "but you also need to think about how to approach this. Confronting her with this information could escalate things quickly. You need to be ready for her reaction." I nodded, my mind racing. I had to consider my options carefully. I could feel my resolve hardening. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about exposing her lies, about taking back my power. I wanted her to face the consequences of her actions, and I was determined to do it on my terms. As I drove home, I felt a mixture of fear and determination. I knew I had to confront Sarah again, but this time I wouldn't be walking in empty-handed. I had the evidence, and I was ready to lay it all out for her. I wanted her to see how deeply she had hurt me, to understand the weight of her choices. When I walked through the door, anxiety bubbled within me. I had no idea how she would react. Would she deny it all again? Would she try to twist the narrative to make me the villain? As I looked around the house filled with memories of happier times, I steeled myself for what was to come. I found her sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, the usual blank expression on her face. I felt a surge of emotions, anger, hurt, but also a glimmer of sadness for what we once had. "We need to talk," I said, my voice firm. She looked up, annoyance flashing across her face. "What now? I don't have the energy for this." "I found out more about your affair," I said, my heart racing. "I have all the proof I need." Her expression shifted, a flicker of fear crossing her features. "What are you talking about?" I pulled out my phone, showing her the messages I had documented. "You think I wouldn't notice? I've seen everything, the planning, the secrets, and the lies." Her eyes widened, and for a moment she looked stunned. "You went through my phone," she gasped. "I did what I had to do," I shot back, feeling the anger rise within me. "You've lied to me for months, Sarah. You think you can just sweep this under the rug?" "I can explain," she stammered, her voice shaky. "You don't understand the pressure I've been under. I didn't mean for it to get this far." "No," I interrupted, my voice rising. "You made choices. You decided to betray me. Don't you dare try to justify this." The tension in the room crackled as we faced off, the hurt and betrayal hanging heavily between us. I could see her scrambling for words, but there was no way she could escape this time. I had laid it all out for her, and there was nowhere left to hide. "You need to make a choice," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "Either you come clean about what's been happening and we try to fix this, or I walk away." Her expression hardened, and I could see the gears turning in her mind. The choice was hers, and I was no longer going to let her dictate the terms of our relationship. I was ready for whatever came next, whether it was anger, tears, or a plea for forgiveness. The ball was in her court, and it felt good to finally take a stand. The silence that followed my ultimatum hung heavy in the air, an almost tangible tension that bound us together in that moment. I could see the wheels turning in Sarah's mind as she processed my words, but the expression on her face was a mixture of anger and confusion. I had anticipated her reaction, but it still felt surreal to confront her like this, armed with the truth. "You really think this is going to work?" She finally spat, her voice low and laced with contempt. "You think laying out your little evidence is going to change anything?" "Change anything?" I echoed, feeling a surge of frustration. "What do you think this is? I'm not going to pretend everything is fine while you keep destroying our marriage. You need to face the reality of what you've done." "I've told you why I did it," she shouted back, her eyes flashing with indignation. "You were so wrapped up in your career, your own life, that you didn't even notice me anymore. I was lonely. Lonely." I felt the anger boiling over. "That's your justification for cheating. I tried to talk to you to understand what was going on, but all I got were excuses and lies. You chose to betray me instead of having a conversation." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears, but I wasn't going to let her play the victim. "I can't believe you went through my phone," she said, her voice wavering. "That's such an invasion of privacy." "An invasion of privacy?" I shot back incredulously. "You think your betrayal was any less of an invasion? You destroyed the trust in our marriage." The room fell silent again, and I could see the weight of my words settling in. I was exhausted, but I knew I needed to see this through. I wanted her to realize the severity of her actions, to confront the consequences head-on. "Tell me the truth," I pressed, my voice steady but firm. "You need to make a choice. Do you want to repair our relationship, or do you want to continue this affair with him?" She hesitated, her expression shifting as she seemed to consider her options. "I don't want to lose you," she finally admitted, her voice breaking. "But I don't know if I can just walk away from Jake. He gave me something that I thought I was missing." "Something you thought you were missing? Sarah, that's not how love works." I tried to keep my voice calm, but I could feel the tremor of hurt behind my words. "You don't just throw away years of commitment for a fleeting thrill. If you really want to fix this, you have to be all in. No more secrets, no more lies." "I know," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I'm scared. I don't know how to go back." "That's the first step," I encouraged, feeling a flicker of hope. "If you want to put in the effort, we can try, but it needs to start with honesty. You have to cut ties with Jake completely. No more contact, no more excuses." She looked at me, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I'll do it," she promised, her voice breaking. "I'll tell him it's over. I want to fix this. I really do." As those words left her lips, a wave of relief washed over me. I wanted to believe her, to trust that we could find our way back to each other, but a part of me couldn't help but feel skeptical. Trust was a fragile thing, easily shattered and difficult to rebuild. "I need time to process everything," I said, trying to temper my emotions. "We've both hurt each other, and it's going to take work to get back to where we were, if that's even possible, but I can't do this alone." "I understand," she said, her voice raw with emotion. "I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. I love you." The words hung in the air between us, heavy with meaning. I wanted to believe her, but I also knew that actions spoke louder than words. I needed to see genuine commitment, not just empty promises. The following days were filled with tension as we both navigated the aftermath of our confrontation. Sarah took steps to distance herself from Jake, blocking his number and deleting all traces of their conversations. I watched her closely, looking for signs of sincerity. We began having difficult conversations, unraveling the threads of our relationship and confronting the issues that had driven us apart in the first place. But every time I caught her looking at her phone with a distant expression, my heart raced with anxiety. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was still hiding something from me, and I struggled to trust her completely. It was a slow and painful process, and I found myself oscillating between hope and despair. On one particularly difficult evening, as we sat in the living room, I decided to broach the topic of counseling. "I think we should consider seeing a therapist," I suggested tentatively. "It might help us both understand our feelings better and give us the tools we need to communicate." She nodded slowly, her expression thoughtful. "I think that's a good idea. I want to work on this, and I know I need help." We spent the rest of the night discussing what we wanted from therapy and how we could start to rebuild our relationship. It was a small step, but it felt like a glimmer of hope amid the pain. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was willing to fight for us, for the love we had once shared, and for the possibility of a better future. As the days turned into weeks, we began attending couples counseling sessions together. Each session was challenging, forcing us to confront difficult emotions and unveil layers of hurt and resentment. But with every honest conversation, we started to chip away at the walls we had built around ourselves. I watched as Sarah slowly began to open up about her feelings of loneliness and inadequacy. It was painful to hear her admit how lost she had felt, how she had sought validation from someone else. But as she bared herself to me, I, too, found the courage to share my fears and insecurities. It was liberating. Each revelation felt like a step toward healing. Yet there were still moments where doubt crept in. I would catch myself overanalyzing her every action, questioning whether she was truly committed or if she was simply playing a role. I found myself grappling with the fear that our efforts might not be enough to mend the deep fissures of trust that had formed. One evening, after a particularly intense counseling session, we sat down on the couch, exhausted but closer than ever. "I know this is hard," I said, my voice filled with vulnerability, "but I believe we can get through this if we keep communicating." "I want that too," Sarah replied, her eyes filled with determination. "I'm committed to making this work. I love you and I want to build a future together." As I looked into her eyes, I saw a flicker of hope. It wasn't going to be an easy journey, but I was willing to take the steps with her. We had both made mistakes, but if we could learn from them, maybe we could find our way back to each other. It was time to turn the page and start anew, to reclaim our love and build a stronger foundation together. But in the back of my mind, I knew the road ahead would be rocky, filled with obstacles that tested our resolve. I just hoped that we would rise to the challenge together, emerging stronger and more united than before. As weeks turned into months, our journey through counseling became a transformative experience. Each session forced us to confront our past, exposing wounds that had long been buried. We learned the importance of vulnerability, of being open about our fears, insecurities, and needs. It was a painful process, but with each painful conversation, we started to rebuild the foundation of our relationship. I remember one particular session where we had to visualize our ideal future together. As we shared our dreams and hopes, I felt a sense of connection that had been missing for so long. I spoke of wanting to travel together, to explore new places hand in hand, and to build a home filled with laughter and love. Sarah shared her desire to strengthen our bond, to nurture our relationship so that it felt fulfilling for both of us. For the first time in a long time, I felt a spark of hope ignite within me. But there were still moments when the shadows of distrust loomed over us. I would catch myself spiraling into doubt, questioning if she was truly committed or if the affair had left marks that would never fade. I often found myself glancing at her phone, feeling a wave of anxiety wash over me whenever it buzzed. It was a battle, a constant struggle between wanting to trust her and fearing that I would be hurt again. One evening, as we sat on the couch wrapped in a blanket, I sensed a heaviness in the air. Sarah had been quiet, lost in thought. "What's on your mind?" I asked gently, turning to face her. She sighed, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I'm scared," she admitted, her voice trembling. "I'm scared that I've hurt you beyond repair and that no matter how hard we try, you'll never fully trust me again." I felt a pang in my heart. "Trust is something we'll have to work on together," I said softly. "It won't happen overnight, but I believe it can be rebuilt. I want to move forward and I want to do it with you." Her eyes met mine and I could see the pain reflected in them. "I know I messed up," she said, her voice breaking, "but I want to show you that I'm committed to making this work. I'm willing to do whatever it takes." In that moment, I realized that healing was a two-way street. While I needed to learn to trust her again, she also needed to prove that she was worthy of that trust. We had to work together to navigate the aftermath of her betrayal, and I was willing to put in the effort. As we continued our counseling sessions, we began to develop new routines, date nights, open communication exercises, and even small gestures of affection that reinforced our commitment to each other. I found myself enjoying her company again, laughing at our inside jokes and reminiscing about the good times. Slowly, we started to reclaim the joy that had once defined our relationship. One day, I surprised Sarah with a picnic at the park, a return to the carefree days when we first fell in love. As we sat on the blanket, surrounded by the beauty of nature, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. We laughed, shared stories, and for a moment the weight of our past didn't feel so heavy. It was as if we were starting anew, as if the love we had always shared was beginning to blossom again. But just as I began to feel comfortable, a moment of doubt crept in. I had decided to confront my insecurities head-on, to communicate openly about my feelings, rather than letting them fester. I still have moments where I feel anxious, I confessed one evening. I worry that you'll slip back into old patterns. It's hard for me too. Shake those feelings. I understand, Sarah replied, her voice filled with compassion. I want you to know that I'm aware of the damage I caused. I'll keep working on myself and our relationship, but I need your trust. It's a process and I'm committed to it. That commitment felt like a turning point. For the first time, I truly believed that we could navigate through the darkness together. We were both evolving, learning from our mistakes and understanding how to communicate better. I could see the effort she was putting in, and it reassured me that she was serious about rebuilding our marriage. As the months passed, we began to create a stronger bond. We learned to express our needs without fear, to support each other through the challenges of life. I started to see glimpses of the woman I fell in love with, the one who had captivated me from the start. And as trust began to mend the fractures in our relationship, I felt the weight of my heart lift. One evening, as we sat together on the couch, I took her hands in mine. I want you to know how much I appreciate your efforts, I said, my voice sincere. I see you trying and it means the world to me. I'm hopeful for our future. Tears filled her eyes as she squeezed my hands. I'm grateful for your patience and understanding. I know I don't deserve it, but I promise I'll keep working on myself. I love you and I want us to be happy again. In that moment, I knew we had both come a long way. While there would still be hurdles to navigate, we had built a new foundation that was stronger than before. We were learning to trust again, and more importantly, we were learning to love again. As I reflected on our journey, I realized that betrayal, while deeply painful, could be a catalyst for growth. It had forced us to confront our insecurities and communicate openly about our desires and fears. I had learned valuable lessons about empathy, vulnerability, and the importance of addressing issues head-on rather than letting them simmer beneath the surface. Our path forward would require ongoing commitment and effort from both of us, but I was ready for the challenge. I looked forward to building a future filled with love, understanding, and resilience. No longer would we take our relationship for granted. Instead, we would nurture it so it flourished into something beautiful. As I held her close, I felt a renewed sense of hope. We had weathered the storm and emerged stronger on the other side. Together, we would continue to write our story, one filled with love, trust, and the promise of a brighter tomorrow.